I thought he would never find out, that stolen kiss and the smell of grease and gasoline would stay buried between engines and secrets. But fate loves irony. Scene 1. The confession that burns. I don't know how to start without sounding like I'm asking for pity, so I'll go straight to it. I cheated, and the anger I feel isn't toward him, it's toward myself. Anger for believing I could hide it, that kiss would stay mine alone, a secret buried between engines and dirty tools. But secrets are heavy, and mine weighed so much it collapsed right onto me. If someone had asked me 6 months ago, "Are you capable of cheating?" I would have laughed nervously and changed the subject. Laughing is the polite way to dodge the truth. Today, I look in the mirror and see someone I swore I'd never become. The woman staring back has tired eyes, hair tied up in any old way, and a shame stuck to her forehead that no amount of hot water can wash off. Daniel was never perfect, but he was good. Good in that annoying, predictable, safe way. And maybe that's what scared me. The certainty he'd never disappoint me. Because when someone is too good, you start looking for the flaw. And if you can't find it in the other person, you invent it in yourself. Scene 2. The life that seemed bulletproof. With Daniel, life was a shared Google Calendar, synchronized notifications, car maintenance scheduled every 6,000 kilometers at the same mechanic as always. We had a wedding spreadsheet with color-coded tabs, vendors, budget, guest list, ceremony songs. He formatted cells with that obsessive care of someone who likes things to make sense. Daniel was the kind of man who arrived exactly on time, sometimes 5 minutes early. The kind who checked the car's oil before any trip, even if it was just a 20-minute drive to his mother-in-law's. The kind who paid bills 2 days before they were due and left yellow Post-its on the fridge with loving reminders. Don't forget the dentist at 3, or bought that chocolate you like. He asked if I needed more coffee before I even noticed my cup was empty. He knew when I was tired just by the way I sighed coming home. He called midday just to ask if I'd eaten, little things, invisible kindnesses, the kind you only notice when they disappear. I called it peace, security. Finally, I found someone who won't disappoint me. And it was, until it became a wall, a solid, reliable, unmoving wall. And I leaned on it so much that at some point, I felt the weight of my own body splitting a crack right through the middle. There was no fight. That's the strangest part. No betrayal from him. No secret messages discovered. No blocked number. No strange perfume on a shirt. No slammed doors. No midnight screaming. No desperate crying. Just the quiet accumulation of days without real conversation. Days where we shared the same space but lived in separate worlds. Dinners where he talked about work, and I gave that of someone who's listening but not present. Nights when he reached for my hand on the couch and I pretended I needed my phone. Goodnight kisses that became automatic, mechanical, like buckling a seatbelt before driving. You do it without thinking, without feeling. If love were a car, ours had passed every inspection. Engine perfect, brakes okay, oil changed, tires inflated, paperwork in order. But there was a noise. Small, almost imperceptible, the kind you only hear when everything else is quiet. And instead of stopping the car, opening the hood, and checking it, I turned the radio up. He did too, and we kept driving, pretending everything was fine, because that was easier than facing that something was broken. I remember a specific night, 3 months before the disaster. We were lying in bed, each on our own side, each on our phone. Daniel was listening to a history podcast and said something about World War II. I gave the usual, scrolling through Instagram, looking at pictures of couples traveling, smiling, kissing at the beach. People who seemed happier than me. People who seemed to be living something I'd lost along the way. You okay? He asked, turning off the podcast. Yeah, just tired, I said, without looking away from the screen. He stayed quiet for a few seconds. I felt the weight of that silence, but I didn't have the courage to look at him. Didn't have the courage to say, actually, I'm not okay. I don't know what's happening to me. I feel a void I can't explain, and I'm scared of losing you, but also scared of staying like this. He turned off the lamp, turned to the side, slept, and I stayed awake another hour, scrolling through happy strangers, trying to figure out where I went wrong, trying to understand when love became habit, when passion became comfort, when comfort became prison. And the worst part, I couldn't blame him, because Daniel was there, present, solid, doing everything right. And I was far away, very far. Even while lying next to him every night, even sharing the same bed, even using the same last name on the wedding invitations we hadn't printed yet. When the noise in the engine got too loud to ignore, when it couldn't be drowned out by music anymore, I didn't seek help. I didn't schedule couples therapy. I didn't sit with him on a Saturday afternoon and say, "We need to talk. Something isn't right." I did what a lot of people do when they don't want to face the emptiness. I pretended it didn't exist. And I tried to fill it with something else, with someone else. With the illusion that the problem was the relationship, not me. And that's what hurts the most. Because I can't blame Daniel. He was there, whole, real. And I was the one absent. I was the one who turned my face away when he reached for me. Scene 3, when suspicion becomes a test. My first mistake wasn't the kiss at the shop. It was opening the phone's location app at 11 on a Tuesday night and turning on Daniel's tracking. As if that would give me proof that he was wrong too. That he was hiding something too. That I wasn't the only broken person in that relationship. I wanted to find something. Anything. A weird detour. A place he hadn't mentioned. An unplanned stop. Any crumb that justified the sensation inside me, rising like dirty water backing up a drain. But the little blue dot on the map never strayed. Never. Work. Home. Grocery store. Gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Gas station every Friday morning. Lunch with his parents on Sundays. Predictable like a clock. Reliable like he always was. And that irritated me. Irritated me in a sick, irrational way, as if his perfection were a mirror showing how far I was from being good enough. I spent 3 nights watching that map until my eyes burned, sitting on the couch, phone in hand, heart racing like I was about to catch him red-handed. But red-handed doing what? Being punctual, being honest, never giving me a reason to doubt him. Daniel slept beside me, steady breathing, arm thrown over the pillow. Completely unaware that the woman sharing his bed was tracking his every move like some deranged detective. This is the dirty part no one likes to admit. Sometimes we look for the other person's mistake just to justify our own. We dig, spy, investigate, hoping to find something that gives us permission to be awful too. To say, so you're not perfect either. Then I'm allowed to mess up. But Daniel didn't mess up, didn't lie, didn't disappear, didn't hide passwords, didn't delete texts, didn't block calls. He was transparent to the point of hurting. On the 4th day of obsessive surveillance, he noticed I was off. We were having breakfast, him already dressed for work, me still in pajamas with deep dark circles under my eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, stopping his food to really look at me. My heart tightened, because he asked the way he always asked, with care, with attention, as if the answer mattered. "I'm fine. Just work," I lied, stirring my coffee without drinking it. "You sure? You seem different." He reached across the table and held my hand. His hand was warm, steady. I wanted to scream, to say, "I'm different because I'm losing myself and don't know how to get back. I'm different because I look at you and feel a void that shouldn't be there. I'm different because I'm afraid of loving you wrong and hurting you without meaning to." But I said none of that. "Just tired." "It'll pass," I said, letting go of his hand gently and getting up to wash my cup. He stayed quiet, didn't push. He trusted me, like he always did. And that hit me like a punch, because I didn't deserve that trust, didn't deserve that worried look, didn't deserve his patience with my growing silences. That afternoon, he texted me from work. "Saw this and thought of you." He sent a photo of a bookstore window, with a book I'd mentioned weeks earlier that I wanted to read. "Want me to buy it for you?" I looked at the message and felt a knot in my throat. Because he remembered. He paid attention. He cared about the tiny details that build a life with someone. I replied, "I'll get it later." 2 days later, The book was on my nightstand, with a note attached. No need to wait. Love you. I picked up the book, read the note, and cried. Cried because I knew. I already knew, in that moment, that I was going to do something terrible, that I was going to cross a line I couldn't uncross, that I was going to destroy what he cared for so lovingly. And even knowing that, I didn't stop. I kept feeding the void with the wrong thoughts, kept looking where I shouldn't, kept imagining scenarios I knew would lead me straight to the edge. Because deep down, I wasn't looking for proof that he was wrong. I was looking for courage to do what I had already decided. And courage, in this case, was just another word for cowardice. On that Friday morning, I woke up to a message from him. Leaving my phone charging at the shop while I run some errands. If you need me, call the work landline. Love you. I read the message 3 times. My heart thumped harder, because I knew which shop he meant. I knew who would be there, and I knew, with terrifying clarity, what I was going to do. If you look long enough, you find something. Not always what you want. Usually what you never wanted to see in your reflection. And that day, I didn't look. I went straight for it. Scene 4, the world's favorite excuse. I told myself it was a phase, that everyone thinks stupid things sometimes, that thinking isn't doing, that every long relationship goes through this, that the problem was work, exhaustion, hormones, the full moon, anything except admitting the problem was me. I washed dishes roughly, as if soap could clean guilt, ran on the treadmill until my legs hurt, listening to a motivational playlist that only made me angrier. Booked doctor appointments, did tests I didn't need, just to feel I controlled something. Every time Daniel asked if I needed help, I said, all good. Accepting help meant admitting I'd lost the manual to myself, and I wasn't ready for that. Deep down, I had already decided. I was only delaying, waiting for the right moment, or the right push, or the right excuse. Something that would take the weight off being the only guilty one. 3 weeks before the shop, a friend told me her husband had cheated. She cried on the phone, saying she never imagined he'd do that. And I said all the right things. You don't deserve this. He's an idiot. You'll get through it. I hung up and looked at Daniel, sitting on the couch watching a documentary about vintage cars. I thought I'd never do that to him. But the truth is, I already was. Not physically. Yet. But mentally, I had already crossed the line. I had imagined the kiss, the touch, the thrill of doing something forbidden. And when you imagine enough, eventually the body follows. We don't trip into a kiss. We walk toward it, step by step, ignoring all the stop signs. Scene 5. How everything began beautifully. I remember the day I met Daniel like it was yesterday. Not because it was some romantic movie moment, but because it's the only memory I can hold on to without feeling it burn. It was raining. One of those sudden summer storms that drown the whole city in chaos. I had just left work, exhausted, hair stuck to my forehead, a heavy bag on my shoulder. I'd forgotten my umbrella, as always, and stood under a shop awning, trapped between waiting or running to the bus stop and arriving soaked. That was when he showed up. Out of nowhere, literally. A tall guy, glasses fogged from the rain, holding a black umbrella that was clearly broken, one rib bent and pulling the whole thing to the left. He stopped in front of me, smiled awkwardly, and said, "This side stays a little drier. Want company to the bus stop?" I laughed. I don't know why. Maybe because of how naturally he offered. Maybe because of the ridiculous umbrella. Maybe because at that moment, I needed someone to show up without me asking. "Okay," I said, squeezing under the drier side, which was also dripping. We walked 3 blocks together, almost in silence, just the sound of rain on the umbrella, cars passing, people running. He held the umbrella tilted more toward me than toward himself, and I noticed his right shoulder was completely soaked. "You're drenched," I said. "Yeah," he shrugged, "but you're not." And it was so simple, so honest, so different from anything I'd known. No hidden agenda, no expectations. He was just doing what he thought was right. When we reached the bus stop, he handed me the umbrella. "Keep it. I live close," he said. "But it's still raining." I tried to refuse. I run fast, he answered, already jogging away with his jacket over his head, laughing like a mischievous kid. I stood there holding that crooked umbrella, watching him disappear into the rain, and thought, who is this guy? 2 days later, we bumped into each other again. Same street, same time. No rain. He had a coffee in his hand. I had my earbuds in. We stopped when our eyes met. Did you keep my umbrella? He asked, smiling. I did, I said, almost laughing. It's at my place? Want me to bring it tomorrow? No rush, he said, taking out his phone. But give me your number so I can collect it someday. And that was it. Simple, natural. No games, no forced mystery, no pretending. On our first date, we talked until the cafe closed. He told me he worked at his family's business, loved history podcasts and vintage cars, was afraid of heights but loved flying. I told him I hated waking up early, dreamed of traveling to places where no one knew me, and had a complicated relationship with commitment. He laughed and said, complicated how? Like, I always think I'm going to ruin everything, I answered, not knowing how prophetic that was. Then we'll ruin it together, he said, taking my hand. And if it breaks, we fix it. On the second date, he held my hand in the movie theater during a film neither of us watched. His hand was warm, steady, and I remember thinking, this hand is never going to let go. On the third date, he kissed me at my doorstep, gently, carefully, like someone asking permission before entering. When I pulled back, he asked, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, eyes still closed. "Really okay. Can I do it again?" I laughed and said yes. And he did, and it was perfect. In the following months, Daniel became my person, the guy who called to ask if I'd eaten, who left Post-its on the fridge with silly phrases like, "You're amazing," or "Don't forget to smile today," who knew when I was sad just by the tone of my voice, who showed up with ice cream when I'd had a bad day, who said my name like he'd been waiting all day to say it, and I believed. I believed it was forever, that we'd found something rare, something people spend their whole lives looking for and don't always find. I remember the day he asked me to move in. We were lying on his couch watching something dumb on TV when he said, out of nowhere, "I want to wake up with you every day." I turned to him. Like, live together? Like, live together, he confirmed. "I know it's early. I know you're afraid of commitment, but I can't imagine waking up without you there. So, think about it. No pressure. Just think." I thought, a lot. And 3 weeks later, we were sharing an apartment, sharing bills, sharing life. The love was real, completely real. And maybe that's why it hurts so much now. Because I can't blame timing. Can't say we fooled ourselves. Can't pretend it was an illusion. It was real. Deeply real. But at some point, I stopped taking care. Stopped looking at him with the same eyes. Stopped appreciating the Post-its. Stopped noticing when he tilted the umbrella more toward my side. And I started thinking it was an obligation. A right. A lifetime guarantee. I forgot that love isn't a statue. It's a plant. It needs water, sun, care. And I let it dry. I let it wilt. And when I realized, I was already looking somewhere else, searching for something I had at home and didn't know how to value. That's the hardest part to swallow. Because Daniel didn't change. He stayed the guy with the crooked umbrella. I was the one who changed. I was the one who let go of his hand. I was the one who turned my face when he tried to kiss me. I was the one who stopped answering "I'm fine" with honesty. And now, looking back, I see the love was there, whole, available, real. And I'm the one who threw it away. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It wasn't bad luck. It was a choice. My choice. And that truth burns more than any other. I had everything, and I chose to lose it. Scene 6. The Friday at the shop. The shop smelled the same as always. Grease, gasoline, reheated coffee, and old rubber. A smell that clings to your clothes and stays for hours, like a memory you never asked for. Leandro had his head under the hood of a silver Civic, hands dirty up to the wrists, white t-shirt stained with oil. When he saw me, He wiped his hands on a rag and walked up to the counter. "Did the noise come back?" he asked, straight to the point. "It did," I lied. There was no noise. The car was perfect. But I needed an excuse to be there. An engine noise was the easiest one. Leandro knew me by sight. Months of quick conversations, always professional, always polite. But there was something about the way he looked. Not disrespectful, just present. Like he actually saw you, not just looked at you. He took the keys and said he'd take the car around the block to listen. I said I could go with him. He shrugged and opened the passenger door. We drove 3 blocks in silence. Him with one hand on the wheel, leaning a bit to try and catch any sound. Me sitting beside him, heart beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. "I'm not hearing anything," he said, stopping at a light. "Sometimes it stops," I said, my voice coming out softer than I meant. He looked at me, not a quick glance. One of those looks that weigh something, that ask questions without words. And I didn't look away. When we got back, he parked the car in the back, away from the street, turned off the engine, the radio was playing some old song, and for a second, just a second, I wanted to leave, grab the keys, thank him, drive home. But I didn't. I stayed there, hanging on a wire, waiting for the wind to push. Because sometimes we confuse vertigo with freedom. A phone buzzed on the counter inside the shop. Some random notification. It wasn't mine. And that tiny detail, that stupid detail, would end up being the most visible scar in this whole story. Scene 7. The kiss that became a sentence. There are moments you choose, and moments you think you're choosing, but really you're being pushed by a hollow so deep that anything feels like an exit. That kiss wasn't one or the other. It was both at the same time. I was standing at the back of the shop, leaning against a workbench cluttered with old tools, stacked engine parts, and oil cans staining the wood. The smell of grease was so strong I could taste it. Gasoline mixed with sweat. Old rubber. Coffee reheated 3 times. The kind of place that sticks to your clothes and follows you home whether you want it or not. Leandro stood in front of me. Not close. Not far. Just at that in-between distance where anything can happen depending on who takes the first step. He'd wiped his hands on a rag, but there was still grease under his nails, dark stains on his fingers, hands that worked with metal, with strength, with things that break and get fixed. I should have left. Should have said, "Thanks for the estimate, I'll come back later." Should have grabbed the keys and walked out. But I didn't. I stayed, caught in a gravity I'd built myself. Like standing on the edge of a cliff and feeling that strange pull. Fear mixed with a sick curiosity about what it would be like to fall. Leandro looked at me. Not quickly. A look that pressed on me. That said, "I know why you're here, and I know this is wrong, but if you want it, I'm in." And I didn't look away. He took one step. Just one. The distance shrank enough for me to feel his warmth. The air got heavy. Hot. Like someone had shut all the windows and killed the fan. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. My hands were sweating. My breath came shallow. And in the back of my head, a voice screamed, "Leave, now, before it's too late." But I didn't leave. Because another voice, louder, hungrier, said, "You deserve to feel something. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to exist outside that routine that's choking you." A lie. All of it. But we believe whatever we need to when we're desperate. Leandro lifted his hand slowly and touched my arm, lightly, testing the water. I didn't pull back, and that was all he needed. It happened fast. 3 seconds, maybe 4. My hand on his neck, his skin hot, damp with sweat, his breath on my face, tasting like coffee and cigarettes. The cold metal of the bench digging into my hip, the muffled radio playing something I couldn't name. No romance. No golden movie lighting, no dramatic soundtrack. It was grease, metal, and badly disguised despair. The kiss was rough, quick, no tenderness, just urgency. The frantic need of someone who knows it's wrong and wants to finish before their conscience wakes up. I shut my eyes tight. Like that could erase what was happening, Like not seeing it made it less real. But I felt it. Every detail. The bitter taste in my mouth. The scratch of his stubble against my skin. The strong smell of burnt oil. My heart racing like an alarm no one bothered to turn off. Then, in those few seconds, the world went silent. Like someone hit pause. And in that silence, I heard things, not with my ears, with whatever part of me still had a conscience. I heard Daniel laughing that time we got lost driving and ended up in a neighboring town eating pastel at a roadside bar. Heard his morning "love you" voice still sleepy before making coffee. Heard the crooked umbrella tapping in the rain while he tilted it more toward my side. And that's when I realized I wasn't filling the emptiness. I was digging a deeper hole. I pulled away. Fast. Like touching a hot stove. Breathing hard. Eyes wide. Like I'd just woken up from a nightmare but was still trapped inside it. Leandro stepped back too. Ran a hand over his face. Didn't say anything. And thank God for that. Because if he had said even one word, I would have collapsed right there. I shouldn't, I whispered, throat dry, voice cracked. I know, he said softly, barely audible. And knowing didn't save anyone. Knowing something is wrong and doing it anyway is worse than ignorance. It's opening the door to hell fully aware of what's behind it. Then I heard it. The door opening. Not loud. A clean metallic click, like a guillotine hitting its mark. My whole body froze. Every muscle locked. My heart stopped for a second, then came back like a sledgehammer. I turned slowly, very slowly, already knowing what I'd see but praying, begging to be wrong. Daniel stood at the shop entrance, holding his phone, looking at us. Scene 8. The silence that cuts time didn't stop, but it felt like it did. You know those accidents you watch in slow motion? When you know the car will crash, the person will fall, something awful is about to happen, and you're powerless. It was exactly like that. Daniel stood in the doorway, sunlight behind him, turning him into a dark silhouette against the bright street. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I didn't need to. I felt it. Felt the weight of his stare slicing through the space between us like a blade. My hand was still in the air, frozen in the shape it had seconds ago, on Leandro's neck, like my body hadn't caught up, like I was stuck in a single frame forever. Leandro backed away, fast, almost tripping on a toolbox, vanished into the back like a ghost. I didn't blame him. If I could have disappeared too, I would have. But I couldn't. I stayed there, standing, alone, facing the man I'd promised to love, protect, respect, and whom I had just betrayed right in front of his eyes. Daniel didn't move at first, just stood there holding his phone, back straight, breathing steady. That was worse than yelling, worse than breaking something. It meant he was holding himself together, using every ounce of strength he had not to collapse. Then he stepped inside, then another step. Slow, like every step hurt, like he was walking on broken glass. I wanted to run, to scream, to beg, to lie, to invent anything to erase that image from his mind, but nothing would work. He saw. There was no doubt. No room for interpretation. He saw everything. He stopped a few feet away, close enough for me to see his face now. And what I saw destroyed me. Not anger, not hatred, not even despair, disappointment, pure, sharp, final, the kind you don't come back from. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, I knew he'd made a decision. Closed some door inside himself and thrown the key away. "So this is where you came to fix the car noises," he said. His voice was calm, controlled, almost polite. That hurt more than any scream. Because if he had yelled, if he had cursed, if he had smashed something, I could have hung my guilt somewhere. I could have reacted. But he didn't give me that. He only stated the fact, like a diagnosis. "Daniel, wait," I said, and my voice came out so weak, so pathetic. I felt shame just hearing it. He shook his head slightly. A tiny, "Don't bother." "I just came to get my phone," he said, lifting it. "Forgot it here earlier. Thought it'd be quick, in and out." He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. Funny how sometimes we come back at the wrong time, or the right time. Depends how you look at it. It's not what you think, I said, and the words sounded ridiculous even to me. He stopped, looked at me for real this time, and in that look, I saw everything. The trust crumbling, the promises turning to dust, the future we planned collapsing like a demolished building, the 3 years imploding. It's not what I'm thinking, he repeated slowly, testing the weight of it. So tell me, what did I see? What am I thinking wrong? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no explanation. He waited. 5 seconds, 10, 15, giving me a chance. I had nothing. He exhaled. Heavy. Okay? He whispered. I've seen enough, and enough hurt worse than a slap. Daniel backed up, put the phone in his pocket, looked at me one last time, and there was something in his eyes I'll never forget. Not rage, not hate. Sorrow. Sorrow of someone losing something they truly loved. I really thought we were different, he said, voice breaking at the end. He turned and left. I stood there listening to his footsteps on the sidewalk, the car starting, tires squealing, engine fading down the street. Then silence, the kind that hurts, that stays, that digs in. My legs gave out. I grabbed the bench, hands shaking, breath uneven. I wanted to cry but couldn't. Wanted to scream but had no voice. Wanted to go back in time, but time doesn't do rewinds. Discovery isn't the end. It's the start of the ruin. And ruin, I learned that day, arrives quietly, but stays for a long, long time. Scene 9, empty house. Full guilt, I went home still smelling like the shop. The kitchen, with its white walls and cold light, looked like an interrogation room. I was the accused and the judge. And there was no defense. I tried calling Daniel. Call declined. I texted. Seen. No reply. Wrote a long paragraph full of I'm sorry and I don't know what got into me. Deleted it all. Because no sentence had the weight of what he saw. I showered. Hot water until my skin turned red. Didn't help. What needed washing was on the inside. I looked in the foggy mirror and didn't recognize the woman there. Who was she? The one who cheats, who lies, who throws away years of love for 3 seconds of cheap adrenaline. I slept on the couch. No TV. No music. Just the sound of the street. Every passing car felt like a reminder that I'd taken the wrong turn. The phone buzzed. My heart jumped. Not him. The bank offering a higher credit limit. I laughed. Bitter. There's no credit for buying forgiveness. I slept badly. Woke worse. And the next day doesn't forgive anyone who destroyed what they loved the night before. Scene 10. When revenge chooses another path. Days later, I heard Daniel sold the car. Our car. The one we bought together, paid in 48 installments, washed every Saturday morning. Sold it like throwing away burned clothes. He canceled the wedding, sent a dry email to the vendors. Due to personal reasons, the event is canceled. No drama, no story, just a period. But the final blow came a week later. Someone told me Daniel hired Leandro to work at the family company. At first, I didn't believe it. Called a mutual friend to check. It's true, she said, with that tone of someone who knows too much. He said he wanted to keep an eye on the kind of man who destroys a home. I froze, because that wasn't revenge. That was a lesson, a daily reminder of what I'd done. Leandro quit a week later. Couldn't take the pressure, the stares, the weight of being the living symbol of someone else's mistake. And me. I never saw him again. His absence didn't bring relief. It brought an even uglier emptiness. Work became torture. Any random laugh felt like it was about me. People move on. The world didn't stop for my disaster. Like my pain was just a notification you swipe away. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't noise. It's coldness. And his coldness taught me a lesson I didn't want. Silence has teeth. And it bites deep. Scene 11. Between retaliating and rebuilding, I wrote a long message to Daniel's parents, explaining half the story, painting myself in gray, trying to show I wasn't the monster he must have described. Reread it 3 times, deleted it. Using people as shields would have been just another cowardice, and I'd been coward enough. I found a therapist, not the kind of therapy where you look for shortcuts. I wanted the truth, and the truth hurt. "Do you think you deserve forgiveness?" she asked in the second session. "I deserve work," I said. And that was the most honest thing I'd said in months. Forgiveness doesn't fall from the sky. You build it, brick by brick, day by day. I cut a lock of my hair in the bathroom, a stupid symbolic gesture, like removing the weight of the part that reminded me of the mistake every time I tied it up. Watched the strand fall and thought, maybe this is how we grow, cutting pieces off until only the essentials remain. I started cooking just for myself, rice, eggs, salad, simple things. Eating in silence, not as punishment, just as a way to learn how to be a person without an audience. I decided I wouldn't stalk his life, wouldn't check his socials, wouldn't ask friends. He didn't owe me that. Sometimes growing is accepting you can't go back to the beginning, so the only path is to close the door gently. Scene 12. When the why weighs more, Daniel still calls sometimes, not every week. Sometimes a whole month goes by. But when his name lights up the screen, my body remembers the smell of his coffee and our quiet mornings with the news on low volume. He doesn't ask how I'm doing, doesn't talk about work, doesn't mention the weather. He goes straight to the wound, ripping off the Band-Aid in one go. Why? And I don't run anymore. Running is what got me here. Because I stopped taking care of us when you trusted me the most, I say. The sentence lands heavy on both sides. Silence. His breath on the line. Then, "It wasn't because you stopped loving me." "No," I answer, honesty burning. "It was rust. When we stop taking care, the metal corrodes quietly. I confuse silence with indifference, and freedom with a cliff." He breathes. Doesn't say he understands. Doesn't forgive. Doesn't promise. The call ends clean, like an empty street after rain. I hang up without crying. Not from coldness. From respect for the work I still have to do on myself. Some questions aren't meant to have pretty answers, just true ones. Scene 13, opening the window and moving on. I delete the last voice message I recorded for him and never sent. It feels almost physical, like taking off a heavy coat in the heat. I open the windows, let the wind in, and for the first time in a long time, the air doesn't fight me, it just moves, and keeps going. If love rusts in silence, healing is the soft sound of sanding every day. Patient work no one claps for, but one day, the surface is ready for another color. I'm not the mistake I made. I'm what I choose to do after it. Today, I choose to end this story with the honesty I should have had at the start. I close my eyes, breathe deep. Let the house breathe with me. No rush, no audience, no lies. I read a phrase spray-painted on a wall last week. Walking home from work. End of chapter is an end of book. And I still have pages to write. Pages where I'm not my worst version. Where I learn to look in the mirror without flinching. Where I rebuild, even slowly, even alone. Because love, when it rusts, makes no noise. But learning to sand and repaint is a daily choice. Even if it's to build something else, somewhere else. With another version of me.